Thank you for being here. I am extremely excited and honored to have Nigeria's Finance Minister, Wale Edun, who has a ton of experience in the country, not in banking, in state government, and we are really excited that he can be here to talk with us. I'm just going to get right into it because, as you know, we're tight on time. Because we are on this track, we are talking about digital infrastructure. So I just want to open with that before we really get into the macro picture. And just would love to hear a few words from you on the importance of enabling investment in Nigeria's digital economy and why this is, I'm sure, is, we call it digital economy, it's just the economy, right?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity to talk about the digital economy and other things that are happening in Nigeria currently. In terms of, when we look at the digital space, I mean, it's about young people. Nigeria has them in abundance. We have a population of over 200 million people, and the median age is 19. We have, I think, of the four or five unicorns in Africa, 3 are of Nigeria origin. It is very much an area which the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which has been in power since May 29, 2023, is focused. We have an important initiative called the Investment in Digital and Creative Enterprises. It's funded together with our development partners, and it focuses in training, skilling, empowering, funding of startups, with particular emphasis on women, particular emphasis on youth. And in addition to that, the Minister for Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, who himself is a techie, as they say.
Doing well.
He's running a program to upskill 3 million Nigerians, and that involves off-site, as you can imagine. He's reaching them digitally, he's reaching them virtually, but he is bringing them into contact. Every so often they meet physically. And so that shows the push and the emphasis in that area in Nigeria.
And the reason I made that point about this is just the economy, as we say, is to talk a bit more about the broader economy into which these digital issues sit. So I saw yesterday you talked about, in an interview, you talked about Nigeria finally, the economy finally turning the corner. And I wanted to explore that with you, to understand the green shoots that you're seeing. Because clearly, if we were just to look at the inflation numbers, they're still very high. Top line inflation is like 32%. Food inflation is 40%. It's a very tough time for a lot of ordinary Nigerians. How do you explain to ordinary Nigerians how we're about to turn the corner and move forward?
Well, I think it's not just for ordinary Nigerians. It's basically all the stakeholders, including the potential investors, including the domestic investors, that we need to, in sporting terms, you say you take the positives from a situation. We have had a period of the president coming into power last May, right at the end of May, and taking important decisions regarding government expenditure to try and repair the government's finances. Right. Of course, there was a very, very expensive, costly fuel subsidy that was costing 2% of GDP. He removed that. And in addition, we had a foreign exchange market that was totally not fit for purpose, I would say. And so he's authorized major improvements in that area through the central bank. And these measures, in the first instance, very costly and painful. So the first commitment was to the poorest and the most vulnerable, to ensure that, that the government intervened. And the lesson came from COVID. During COVID, you saw that one of the ways to intervene directly and attack poverty is that you directly pay people, give them an amount where they will now decide what their priorities are and go to the markets or wherever else with it. So we've had on the one hand major intervention moves, but it's now a total program. It's not just one or two key measures here and there. It's a program of repairing government finances, increasing government revenue, minimizing and making government spending much more efficient.
Right.
And on the monetary side.
Can you talk a little bit about how you intend to increase revenue?
Well, the first thing in Nigeria, we're an oil nation.
Right.
So the first thing to do is to get oil production up, and there's been efforts to do that. We've had issues of security,
right,
issues of oil theft and losses, damage, breakages of pipelines, and so forth. And that has been addressed, or is being addressed, and there's been success. When Mr. President came into power, I think output was 1.25 million barrels a day. It is up to around 1.6, but it has more to go. The lowest hanging fruit for Nigeria right now is to bump up oil production to whatever we are allowed within the agreements that the country has signed.
What's your target and what's realistic?
Well, the OPEC quota is around 1.7, but we do have production that is outside the quota. It's more or less oil, but it's condensate and so forth. So we could get up to around 2 million barrels if we had the security, we had the investment, and we had the logistics.
So there's room to go up to 2 million, and that would be obviously.
No, at that point, I
2
think
million a month.
2 million barrels per day. At that point, we will be talking a totally different conversation, but I think we should talk about where we really are now, and that is we are not at that level yet. So the other areas have to come in, apart from relying on oil output, the other areas, the non-oil, the tax to GDP, greater efficiency in collecting taxes and other fees and charges that government has a right to impose. And what we have done simply is we've used digitization, technology, to improve the processes by which government bills, collects, and monitors the revenue that it is due. And similarly, on the expenditure side, there are some fiscal incentives which perhaps people were not had access to, which they should not. So for example, we had the import duty waiver for people who are importing machinery and equipment and even raw materials that are in line with government's priorities. We have added a monitoring and evaluation module, and technology is really runs throughout everything that we are doing. We've added that module, which now allows us to track better the outcomes and track better what is being done with equipment and items that are brought in duty-free, whether they're being recycled and so forth.
What sort of boost?
We have a better window on that.
What sort of boost do you expect to tax revenues? Just in rough terms.
Well, in terms of government revenue, we have a target this year of increasing government revenues by 60%. So it's very much a stretch target, but we need it because at the same time, we have a target of bringing down the fiscal deficit from around 6.1% of GDP to about 3.8%. So if you're consolidating fiscally like that, you need a real boost in revenue. And whereas normally you would be talking about small increments with technology, I mean, we're in the US and we know what the power of technology to really boost things and give you quantum leaps, which is what Nigeria needs, and we're on the road to getting at this time.
The conversation about revenue, obviously, on the flip side, we look at the challenges with debt, right, for the country. The issue, I mean, Nigeria in terms of debt to GDP is not in a bad place, but in terms of revenue, debt to revenue, it's a concern, especially if you, I think last year it was something like 98% or something like that if you looked at the budget. Should Nigeria can it take on more debt if you're that confident about the revenue coming in? I mean, what should be happening here?
Well, I think in order to stabilize the economy and to stabilize things like to get the economy growing again, you do have to bring down inflation. You do have to stabilize the exchange rate, and you do have to eventually get interest rates down so investors can borrow in addition to the equity and invest, achieve higher productivity, grow the economy, and create jobs for all these young people at the end of the day, and thereby reduce poverty. So debt is part of the equation, but it must be balanced and it must be sustainable. And I think many African countries are struggling with that. I think we have a handle on it, we are focused on it, and we know that the answer to debt is revenue. If you have enough cash flow, you have enough revenue to service your debt. I mean,
so that's why the priority,
we're in the US and look at their debt figures, but the difference is that they have the revenue, taxes, and other government income to service, and that's what lenders want. And
just to move it on because of time, you've also talked about the drop in foreign direct investment over the last decade or so. Which of your policies, just in terms of the priorities of your policies, what are you doing to turn that around? Because I think you talked about a 19 billion drop in 10 years, FDI.
I think we have not attracted, particularly in the oil and gas sector, we have not attracted our fair share of foreign direct investment. But it's a progression. From where we are, we have stabilized. The monetary authorities, the central bank, led by the governor, have taken decisive measures which have turned, as he was pointing out yesterday at a forum, Nigeria or the Naira, which is the Nigerian national currency, from being, in February, I think it was seen as the worst performing currency in the world. And as of today, I believe credible commentators and analysts are saying that the Naira is the best performing currency in the world. So you see what a difference a day makes. We have managed to, together with, it is what the authorities are doing on the monetary side to remove distortions and whatever was blocking the free flow of supply of foreign currency. And of course, on the fiscal side, there is a price to pay because one of the key things has been higher interest rates.
Right.
Partly because that's the focus is on inflation and getting inflation down, but at the same time, it is giving also a reward in terms of the flow of foreign exchange from foreign portfolio investors. And if you stabilize the economy enough for portfolio investors to come, behind them are the longer term, the more stable and the bigger foreign direct investors who make a bigger commitment to the country. So it's a progression, and we believe what we are doing is going to encourage domestic investors and then, of course, foreign direct investors.
President Tinubu has also been on a couple of trips, on sort of investment promotion trips, I think you would call them. How successful have those been in terms of bringing in investors? Do we expect to see more? How has this worked so far?
Well, it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing conversation. We haven't seen any headline making investment commitments, but there's a lot of interest from foreign direct investors, and rightly so. Nigeria, when you look behind the immediate issues which are being dealt with, is resource rich, is people rich. It has a lot of talented people, quite a high level of education amongst them, and it really has a lot going for it, even in the agricultural sector, in the solid mineral sector. So the process of engaging with potential investors is ongoing. It is yielding fruits in terms of people are interested, are coming to Nigeria, are staying engaged with us on the topic of looking at the potential opportunities we have right across the board, all the sectors, all the value chains. We have something to offer investors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Please join me in thanking the Minister for excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you.